training systems are often seen as just funky and sexy stuff, and they're not just funky and sexy stuff. They are a mixture of a load of variables. Now, in relation to variables, I'm going to recap a few. This is really good, actually, if you're in level 2 principles mode as well, because you need to know the variables for that. But let's talk resistance training variables to start off with. We always have something called 5 R's and a V. And actually, Beth, if you're watching, I had a moment the other day when I was teaching Beth her level 2. I actually just blanked out, couldn't remember one of these 5. So let's hope that we've got all 5. 5 R's and 1 V. That's what we're looking at today in terms of variables and training. So, how do you remember all the different things you can change in order to get the result that you want and need to get with your clients? We want to change them bit by bit, little by little in every single change we do gradually becomes a lot. And that's what we're looking at. So, 5 R's and 1 V. What are they? I'd be really interested to hear whether you guys know this actually. Have a couple of guesses. So chuck in there what you think some of these R's are going to be. These are variables for resistance training. You know, the stuff that you kind of tweak every now and then just to make things harder, or that you have to tweak to make things easier. What do you think some of these 5 R's and the V actually are? What do you reckon they stand for? Pop in some comments. Let me see what's going on in the world. Let me know you're still there. If you're watching this on the recording, by all means, still pop in a comment. I would love to still see that later. So, I've got a couple of comments coming across. Lovely. So, resistance, defo one. Okay, so resistance, you can definitely take up. So, resistance you can change depending on what your client's goals are. So, if you have resistance, then obviously you make it harder, or increase resistance to make it harder. You guys get that, you know that. But in relation to the other R's, most people just change resistance. They don't change the other R's, which ends up being a little bit stagnant. And especially if you stick with one training system, then you basically are having, okay, Joe's got ratio in there. What do you mean by ratio, Joe? Is that like the speed that you're doing things, or like in terms of speed up and speed down? Oh, we got a few. Perfect. Keep them going. I can see your comments. Lovely. So in terms of resistance, if you just stick with the same training system, you'll probably, the only variable you'll have is to go up through resistance and make it gradually harder. Now, the way to do that, obviously, if you're just doing supersets, for example, and you want to make it harder for the next session, all you can do is go up in weight, gradually, go up in an increasing weight. So that's your resistance changed. But what happens when you kind of get to the point your client doesn't need to be doing this anymore, or they're injured, or they just aren't getting the variety that they need out of that session? Let's look at the other ones. So Stu says reps, absolutely. Repetitions is a real simple one that you can change. So if I don't change the resistance, say we're staying at the same body weight if we're doing body weight squat, or I don't change the resistance in terms of, let's say we're doing a bench press and we keep it at 50 kgs the whole time, then I can just do more repetitions. And if I do more repetitions, then I get, it is slightly harder. It is an improvement. It is a progression. However, you've got to be really careful based on whether you decide you've got to be really careful with these repetitions that you stay within the zone that you want them to stay in. So the zone in particular, say if you're going for hypertrophy, it's got to be 8 to 12 reps or within a certain time frame, so about a minute's worth. You don't want to be going off too much longer as you head towards a different goal. Remember I said it's all about goals. So the other ones you got in terms of rest, I'm going to chuck that in there as well. Fantastic, Stu, you were on this. What would make it easier from a harder from a rest point of view? Would it be a longer rest or a shorter rest to make it harder? So pop in your comments. Defo want to hear them. So rest, how do you make it harder by just changing the rest? Say we change nothing else about our exercises, but we just change the rest. How do we make it harder? Pop in comments. Let me see them. Also, let me know if things are all going well. by popping a couple of little thumbs up. Let me know you can see and hear me. All things are going great. And if you use these, I'll have a couple of thumbs up as well. Awesome. Fab. Okay. So in terms of rest, if we had a shorter rest, it's harder. Great. And most training systems play off rest in particular. Some of them play off reps, but most of them train off changing that rest or removing the rest entirely. So take something like a superset compared to a single set. You have a single set, or let's say a multiple set, whereby you do an exercise, you have a little rest, you do an exercise. If you have those, and that rest is say about a minute, and you then take away that rest entirely, so you go do an exercise and then do another exercise straight after it, no rest in between, then it's going to be harder because the muscle gets trained twice back to back. Makes sense, hey? So a smaller rest is obviously going to be harder. Now, a lot of training systems just play with that by using the rest. And then the other one, Stu, you've totally got all of these. So rate is the other one, which is tempo. So you could just slow it down. So say we're doing press-ups and we can't change the resistance. We don't want to change the reps because that will put us in a different zone. We want to still target, say, at 12 reps because that's what they want. They want hypertrophy. We don't want to necessarily change the rest, or that's a different part of the program. But we could make it harder in set by just going slower. So say we get to about 8 out of our 12 reps and we're doing our press ups, 8 out of 12 reps, and we get to the 8th one and they've still got it in the tank. They've still got a bit of energy going on. In which case, you can just slow them down. So instead of going 2 seconds up, 2 seconds down, you just get much slower the whole way down. So slower on the way down, and you could either keep it the same on the way up, or you could keep it so that they go slow down, pause at the bottom, and slow back up. Rate is a fantastic one to use because you can vary it mid-set, which means you're always going to get to overload, because as long as you're monitoring intensity mid-set, you're well away. If you monitor intensity mid-set, you know whether they're going to achieve that 12 reps as targeted or not. And if they're going to achieve it, then fantastic. If they're not, if they're going to be able to do much more than that, or they're finding it too easy, slow it down, make it really, make it much harder for them. Next one is range. So range is about range of motion. So Stu, you are totally on this, and I'm going to keep it in your order. Anyone know what the V is whilst we're here? So range of motion. So we could make this press up that we're talking about harder by going down lower. We can make our squats harder by increasing that range of movement, going down lower, which means we can make something easier by doing a smaller range of movement. So if your client's really struggling to be able to do a body weight squat, do a smaller one. Take it really gentle, just do a little small squat. A shallow squat is much better than nothing at all. And then you can gradually progress that range of movement over time. Now, these vary, don't they? So let's also, we've got a V on here as well. The V is all about volume. How much volume are they going to do? Do they do 1 set, 2 sets, 3 sets? That's going to depend on where your client is at the start and where they're progressing towards, but also what their goal is. And also the training system that you choose will depend on those. Aha. So let's, for example, say that, in fact, we don't need to go examples. That's fine. Let me add one more thing, then we'll do a couple of examples. If anybody's got any training related questions tonight, please pop them in, because I love hearing all your questions and it gives me even more wonderful stuff to chat to you about. So pop in your questions. In relation to these 5 R's and a V, you would change different things depending on what their specific goals are. So, for example, what ones do you reckon would be most applicable for somebody that has an endurance goal? So let's say somebody has an endurance goal. Which of these would be best to focus on in relation to going from week 0 all the way across to week 8? Let's say I only changed a couple of my variables between week 0 and week 8. If I then moved it across for the whole of those weeks, what would be the best variable to change? I'm going to wait to see if you respond. Let me have a little look what's going on the old YouTube. Anybody joining us? And can you see me okay? Because I cannot see the camera on that one at all. So hopefully you guys can see us. Hopefully you can see me fine. Stu, you went for reps. You could go more reps. Yeah, definitely, because then you're basically the sort of amount of volume that you're doing is also increasing, but you also don't want to go so many reps that you're going beyond a meaningful rate. So reps within reason could definitely work for endurance. And you also got to be careful that you're not kind of just going up and up and up and up and up on reps and not changing your resistance. But yes, reps can work. Volume would definitely work. So if somebody wants to increase their endurance, then giving them another set in between would be great. And also rest. Rest is a fantastic one. So add in rest. If I reduce your rest in between your sets, that is a great way of increasing your endurance and your, especially if you think about stamina and fitness, they can now do more before they need a rest. Bonza, perfect. You think about that in terms of cardio training. I know we're talking resistance. Think about that in terms of cardio. You reduce your rest on an interval trainer, and you've basically got an increased VO2 max. You're increasing your rest, your ability to recover in a shorter amount of time. So yeah, endurance definitely. Now, tempo is also going to be really good because if you have a slower, if you've got more time under tension, so time under tension, then you're going to be able to hold that for longer. You're going through it for a longer phase. You're spending more time under tension, more pressure on the muscle, more pressure on the tendons, the ligaments, and as a result, everything gets stronger and it's great for endurance. So your endurance ones are going to be repetitions, rest, rate, and volume. So if somebody's got endurance, I'll focus on these 4 over those, say, 8 weeks that I might be working with them. Makes sense? Give me a couple of thumbs up if things are making sense. Fantastic.